Internet hackers claim that confidential emails from scientists show that climate change data has been fiddled. They allege scientists have been cooking the books to support the view that the global warming is caused by human activity rather than a naturally occurring phenomenon. Well, we're now joined by British MP Peter Lilley, a former senior cabinet minister under Prime Ministers Margaret Thatcher and John Major, who's live with us in London to discuss the so-called ClimateGate affair. Mr Lilley, thanks very much indeed for joining us here on RT. Now, if these allegations about a conspiracy are true, why do you think such manipulation could be happening, and who could actually be benefiting from it?
Well, I think it's an example not so much of a conscious conspiracy, but of an unconscious conspiracy by a group of scientists who, from reading the emails, are so loyal to each other that they're determined to agree with each other even more than they're determined to agree with the facts. So if the facts no longer agree with their theory, they try and change the facts rather than trying to change their theory. And the people who benefit from it are obviously the scientists themselves, because they feel morally superior. They're leading a crusade, apparently, to save the world, and they believe in it profoundly, even when the facts refute them. And they also get large grants from government for carrying on this sort of research, and they wouldn't get it if they produced the opposite sort of conclusions.
So these sort of emails being uncovered, if they are genuine, this could be a big blow to the environmentalist movement, could it not?
It could, and the scientists concerned have had to admit that the emails are true. There may be, conceivably, have been one or two filtered in which are not, but there's been no evidence of that or no suggestion of that so far. It'll be a blow to their credibility, but so great is the momentum, so large is the amount of money invested in this theory, that it will take even more than this exposure to derail it, I fear.
What are your thoughts then about this? Do you think that alternative energy companies, for example, they could be profiting from this so-called fear of global warming and that it's not related to human activity? What are your thoughts about this? Do you think that, that there is perhaps a conspiracy here?
Well, I'm certain from having read a lot of the emails and documents that they were adjusting the data, manipulating the data, concealing the doubts they had internally, and continuing to express certainty externally. There's even an example of the computer codes that they've adjusted to cut off the evidence of the recent period of global cooling. For the last decade, the world hasn't heated up as their theories suggest it should have done. Indeed, it's cooled slightly. So they cut that out of their computers, and they cut it out of the diagrams and so on that they produce. And likewise, they've altered the data in the past, or they've selected data from the past, which has wiped out the evidence of the so-called medieval warming period, when the world was probably warmer than it is now. Because after all, if it was warmer then without us all burning lots of hydrocarbons, it suggests that hydrocarbons aren't the only things that cause the temperature and the climate to change.
But people are taking this extremely seriously. We're now seeing that there's a major climate change conference in Copenhagen, hoping to forge a new treaty to replace the current Kyoto Protocol. There must surely be some threat of global warming, otherwise these conventions wouldn't be happening. So what do you think about this future meeting?
Well, I think that I personally, I'm a physicist by training long ago, accept that doubling the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere will produce a modest warming in the climate, but nothing like the alarmist fears which these scientists have been trying to generate, or that lie behind the Copenhagen conference. I think the one thing one can predict with great certainty is that the Copenhagen conference will not achieve a legally binding agreement. They'll simply agree to meet again, and tens of thousands of delegates will meet again somewhere else in a few months' time, burning lots of carbon in their jet aeroplanes and their air-conditioned rooms, and hypocritically telling us, the rest of us, that we shouldn't ever travel by aeroplane or burn any petrol or gas.
But just finally, the fact is, I'm sitting here in Moscow. There should be snow here at this time of year, and even amateur meteorologists or experts will think there is a case. There is global warming occurring at the moment. So do you really think that this money is being wasted, or do you think it could be put to better use?
Oh, the climate changes and is very variable. The very day the British Parliament passed the Climate Change Act, which is the most expensive piece of legislation we've ever passed, committing us to cut our emissions of CO2 by 80% at the cost of some £400 billion, it snowed in London for the first time in October in 74 years. So it's been exceptionally cold sometimes, exceptionally warm a month or two later, but overall there's been no upward trend for the last decade. There was for the previous 2.5 decades, and before that it was actually cooling again from the war through till 1975. So they're trying to make an awful lot of a relatively short period of rapid warming and ignoring the cooling that occurred before it and the cooling that's occurred more recently.
Very interesting to hear what you have to say. Peter Lilley, thanks very much indeed. British MP for the Conservative Party and former government minister, live in London. We appreciate your time here on RT. Thank you.
Climate scientist has now come under pressure to resign over a series of leaked emails which global warming skeptics say point to a mass conspiracy. The scandal erupted after a research server was hacked into and private emails and documents were released, suggesting that scientists may have colluded to prevent the release of climate data. For more on this, we are now joined by our London correspondent, Laura Emmett. So, Laura, wow, interesting subject here indeed. I'll get straight to the point. This issue seems to be causing a lot of controversy. How likely is it that people will lose their jobs over this?
Well, Rory, I think in order to assess that, really, it's important to look at who all these people are that are involved. Obviously, there's Professor Jones, who is the scientist at the heart of this recent leaked email scandal. He stands accused, basically, of massaging the figures that relate to temperature globally. Then, of course, there's the University of East Anglia, which is the university that he works for. He's the head of the Climate Research Centre, and that's the top source of temperature data in the world. So it's a very important research institute when it comes to climate change. And the person who has called for his resignation is none other than George Monbiot. And as I'm sure you know, Rory, George Monbiot is a leading environmentalist. Really, his name is synonymous with green issues in the UK. It's been said of him that he's the acceptable face of green activism by the Independent newspaper. He eats meat, he won't take to the trees, and he won't swear at the police. So a lot of people listen to what George Monbiot's got to say, and I think from Professor Jones's point of view, if there's anyone you don't want calling for your resignation in the position that he's in, it's probably Monbiot. He doesn't want the green establishment turning against him. So it's certainly possible that heads will roll. But perhaps what's more important about this whole scandal is that it raises serious issues about the science of climate change, and not just that, but science in general. If figures can be used to show anything you like, then where's the vigorous testing that science is supposed to represent? However, the University of East Anglia is standing by its research and by Professor Jones. And Jones himself thinks that this was a deliberate attempt to undermine the entire science behind climate change ahead of the very important Copenhagen Summit on greenhouse gases that's coming up at the beginning of next month. So we'll have to see how this develops.
Laura, forgive me, can we just backtrack for a moment here? Could you remind us of how this scandal developed?
Yeah, of course I can. So it all surrounds around a hacker who got into the University of East Anglia's computers and took from the Climate Research Centre 1,000 emails and 3,000 documents, which he then posted to a server in Russia. So they're all available for everybody to see on the internet. And they raise serious issues about the methods and practices used to present data that relates to climate change. I'll give you a couple of examples. The word trick is used in these emails to describe the analysis of temperature. Climate change skeptics are saying that they've used a trick in order to suggest that temperature for the last 1,000 years has been rising, when in fact skeptics say that temperature has been falling. Professor Jones also expressed some measure of glee when he heard about the death of a leading climate change skeptic, so that doesn't look good. And really this whole thing has reopened the debate surrounding the science that climate change is based on. Skeptics say that the Earth's temperature has in fact remained more or less steady since 1998, and that there's some information that shows that suggests that temperatures will get cooler over the coming years and not warmer. So there certainly are still things to be looked at regarding climate change. And I mentioned the Copenhagen conference, which starts on the 7th of December. This is going to make getting a deal on the reduction of greenhouse gases from the countries that will be represented there much more difficult than it originally would have been, and it wasn't going to be an easy sell anyway. So we'll have to see how that pans out at Copenhagen, Rory.
Well, Laura, that's certainly bound to raise a few eyebrows in Copenhagen. Thank you very much for keeping us up to date on that, and We'll get more down the road. Laura Emmett reporting live from London.
A potentially major scandal is unfolding after someone released thousands of emails and documents sent between prominent scientists of global warming debate. The New York Times has verified that these emails are legitimate, which wasn't too hard because some of them were written by and to one of their reporters. More on that here in just a second. But first, let's start with the science that has been so settled for all these years. What are these guys saying behind closed doors about their so-called bulletproof consensus? Well, Kevin Tenthberth, he's a climatologist at the National Center for Atmospheric Research. He wrote, quote, "The fact is, we can't account for the lack of warming at the moment, and it's a travesty that we can't." Incorrect data, inadequate systems, yeah. Travesty, pretty good word for it. How about Phil Jones, head of the Climatic Research Unit at the University of East Anglia? "I have just completed Mike's nature trick of adding in the real temps to each series for the last 20 years to hide the decline." Yes, he's talking about a trick that another scientist previously used in a peer-reviewed journal to apparently hide the decline in temperatures. Incredible. But it doesn't stop there. How about when scientific journals published material that Jones didn't like? Quote, "I can't see either of these papers being in the next IPCC report. Kevin and I will keep them out somehow, even if we have to redefine what the peer review literature is," end quote. Think about that next time you hear about, oh, the consensus and the science is settled, and Al Gore's bragging about the peer-reviewed journals. Now, what happens to a peer-review paper when they disagree with what gets published? Quote, "Our only choice is to ignore this paper. They've already achieved what they wanted. But at least they're not intentionally deleting documents or hiding information, right?" Oh, no, they're doing that too. Here's Phil Jones writing Michael Mann, the scientist that came up with that hockey stick graph, that one. He said, "Mike, can you delete any emails you may have had with Keith, REAR4? Keith will do likewise. He's not in at the moment. Minor family crisis. Can you also get email to Gene? Get him to do the same. I don't have his new email address. We'll be getting Casper to do the likewise." Count them. There's Jones, Mike, Keith, Gene, and Casper. Whoever they are, potentially deleting emails, supposedly about supposed science. So why all the secrecy? Well, we find out from another email from Michael Mann about skeptic Stephen McIntyre. "I'm sure you're aware that McIntyre and his ilk realize they no longer need to get their crap published in legitimate journals, you know, the ones they're siphoning. All they have to do is put it up on their blog, and the contrarian noise machine kicks into gear. Pretty soon, Drudge, Rush Limbaugh, and Glenn Beck and their ilk are parroting the claims." So you see, if McIntyre sees the data, he'll find the tricks that are in it to hide the declines. And then crazy people like me might just let you know about it. Oh, the horror. What will happen to cap and trade? That email was sent from one of the scientists to a New York Times reporter. That same reporter, Andrew Revkin, thankfully did report on the story for the New York Times. But he will not post the documents because, quote, "the documents appear to have been acquired illegally and contain all manner of private information and statements that were never intended for the public eye, so they won't be posted here." Oh, well, I know the New York Times would never post or print anything that wasn't intended for the public eye, like maybe the way we monitor terrorists or specific strategies to protect our troops in the field. No, the New York Times, they're above that. Deleting emails, hiding declines, incorrect data, inadequate systems, redefining scientific peer reviews for their own uses. This is what appears to be going on behind the scenes, and literally trillions of dollars of policy decisions are being based on what these guys are telling us. If your gut said, wait a minute, this global warming thing, it sounds like a scam, well, I think you're seeing it now. We told you this was going on without proof because we listened to our gut. You'd never believe me, but once again, here we are with yet another brand new reality.
Now, here's another thing coming out of Russia, Putin, once again, sticking it to Obama, and he is basically saying anthropogenic climate change is a geostrategic weapon, and he's just saying globalists want to undermine Russia's thriving energy sector. He characterized climate change as a fraud. He's saying it's used to prevent Russia from tapping its vast oil and natural gas reserves. Greenpeace claims that 85% of CO2 equivalent emissions in Russia come from its energy industry. So got to give it to Putin, once again, calling out Obama and this globalist regime.
President Barack Obama is not a world leader. Obama may be led by the New World Order, but that qualifies about as much as the Nobel Peace Prize Obama received for reaching out to the Muslim world. And oh, how Obama reached out. ISIS is eternally grateful for all of his help. Obama's Nobel Peace Prize is equivalent to Milli Vanilli's Grammy Award, and like theirs, the Nobel Peace Prize should be returned. When it comes to the load of bull Obama has been shoveling in the global arena for the last 7 years, it turns out a vast majority of the people can cut right through the rubbish and red tape. That's why 89% of Russians, 2 out of 3 Britons, and 94% of Americans, according to a New York Daily News poll, support Russian President Vladimir Putin. Putin, fresh off of single-handedly altering the dynamic in the Middle East, now says global warming is being used as an economic weapon against his country. He characterized climate change as a fraud used to prevent Russia from tapping its vast oil and natural gas reserves. Putin's senior economic advisor from the early 2000s, Andrei Ilyanov, told the New York Times, "We found that while climate change does exist, it is cyclical, and the anthropogenic role is very limited. It became clear that the climate is a complicated system, and that so far the evidence presented for the need to fight global warming was rather unfounded."
Myth of Arctic meltdown. Stunning satellite images show ice cap is thicker and covers 1.7 million square kilometers. Look, and it's the same thing for the South. This is the Arctic ice shelf. This is 2012, and you can see this is 2014. Much bigger, with the entire Northern Passage for ships completely blocked off. I mean, that is a fact that he said that by 2013 it would be completely gone, and it's now the biggest ever recorded by satellites.
Greenpeace and the World Wildlife Fund have complained Russia does not consult them on its climate policies. It is their opinion. It does not reflect anything, and it is not objective, said Alexander Bedritsky. As Putin focuses on the reality of Russia's global priorities, President Obama will sail into the end of a catastrophic occupation of the U.S. presidency after raising the debt ceiling in yet another backdoor overnight deal, lifting the spending caps and increasing them to $80 billion over 2 years, as the fragile U.S. economy careens toward a $20 trillion debt, an increase of over 70% since Obama took office.
Raising the debt ceiling, which has been done over 100 times, does not increase our debt. It does not somehow promote profligacy. All it does is it says, you got to pay the bills that you've already racked up, Congress.
Obama's legacy of enacting numerous Bilderberg brainchildren will be the very global knots future world leaders, the likes of Russia's Putin, Iceland's President Grimson, and Hungary's President Adder, will find themselves untying far into the future. John Bound for Infowars.com.
So just to point out some of the blatant hypocrisy with this global warming and this man-made climate change. Now, we reported a couple years ago the EPA was banning wood-burning stoves. They were banning over 80% of the production and sale of America's current wood-burning stoves. This is the oldest heating method known to mankind, and it's the mainstay of rural homes and, of course, the nation's poorest families there. So they banned wood-burning stoves that didn't limit fine airborne particulate emissions to a maximum of 12 microgram limit. So just to put that in context, the EPA estimates that secondhand smoke from tobacco in a closed car can expose a person to 3,000 to 4,000 micrograms of particulates per cubic meter. Now, the big issue here with these wood-burning stoves and tobacco, cigarettes, as well as what's coming out of your car exhaust, is benzene, this known carcinogen benzene. It can cause lung cancer as well as birth defects. And based on what a lot of people were reporting coming out of the toxic landfill, the radioactive landfill in St. Louis, what the residents could confirm there was benzene. And just take a look at this video that we shot while we were in St. Louis. This is at an EPA Superfund site. This is an EPA Superfund site on fire. The leachate is leaking now. We can see it coming out. They are trying to scoop up as much of this material as they possibly can. 10,000 gallons of this stuff has now leaking, and they're trying to clean this up as fast as they can. This is a crazy scene down here at the Westlake landfill. Leanne McAdoo reporting for Infowars.com. I know this is crazy, but we are back here out at the Westlake landfill. Wanted to go ahead and get some Geiger counter readings of our own, just for our own peace of mind. Really lucky to report that they're sticking around the high 40s, not going up to that threshold, that radiation threshold that we're warned about. Now, what you witnessed last night was the leachate leak here. And of course, leachate is liquid that moves throughout the landfill, and what it does is it's collecting those undesirable particulates that are in the landfill. It's not really a big deal unless, of course, it leaks out. It can cause pollution, and it smells really, really bad. The issue with this landfill is that this is now a radioactive landfill. And so if you are collecting particulates of that radioactive material, and then of course the leachate tank suddenly leaks out 10,000 gallons of that fluid, that is not a good thing for this community. And that is why so many people are concerned that this is not a stable site. So if 10 to 11,000 gallons of toxic materials, toxic leachate, bursts out of a landfill where they say they've got everything under control, but clearly they don't. Myself and Josh Owens, as well as many of the residents there, were exposed to this benzene and other harmful toxicants. That's completely okay. The EPA says they've got everything under control, but if you want to light a fire in your fireplace, you need to get taxed for that. Pay something, a little something to Al Gore.
The war on humanity continues, shutting down our economy. First, it was freezing. Ice age is coming. We got to have world government to save us. Then it was global warming. Then it's climate change, period. Vladimir Putin has come out and said anthropogenic climate change is a geostrategic weapon. Kurt Nimmo, Infowars.com. This needs to get out there big time because Russia's breaking with the globalists on every front. They didn't go along with carbon taxes before and said they weren't sure it was real. Now they're saying, look, it's meant to shut down all major industrial economies not controlled by the IMF and World Bank. To have a major world leader who's made the world bipolar again, not unipolar in its power, to have Putin come out and say exactly what it is a devastating blow against the New World Order. This is cause for celebration. And Putin just went up another notch in my view, because you know I don't trust him and know what he was part of and all the rest of it. The point is, he's telling the truth. He says they want to break up our families. They want to destroy our cultures. They want to get rid of our sovereignty. They want to override us. They want to sabotage the human condition. This is a genetic takeover. I mean, the Russians do listen to this show. I was told by the head of RT America some stuff that just sounds so unbelievable. But who would have thought Matt Drudge would show up here? You know, who would think top generals, you know, the former head of special forces has been on. 2 different heads of special forces. I mean, we have the big listeners, and yes, the Russian government listens to the show. Then I was told that by RT International, one of their main heads, I'll leave it at that, in a Skype interview, where I was told it was a Skype interview, and it wasn't a Skype interview. Once they cut to me, they started interrogating me in a big table with a bunch of top Russians at it asking me questions. And then they had been threatened to never have me back on RT by the U.S. government. They were basically asking me who I was, who I worked for, how I could do certain things. And they were asking me if I was a U.S. government agent or who I worked for. And I said, I work for Liberty. But that's the level I'm at where, like a James Bond movie, it's not RT, it's a big table in a government building with a bunch of guys staring at me. And I see them on TV sometimes, and it's like Russian, you know, leaders. Putin listens to the show is the point, and I'm not giving us all the credit. But when the signal goes out that this is an anti-human shutdown program for austerity, it's game over for the New World Order. It's game over. So we have to tell it like it is. It's a plan to kill us. It's a weapon system to selectively cut off the energy. If General Electric, heading the commission, can shut down over 1,000 power plants they're in competition with, they increase your prices and then increase their output because they're exempt from the carbon rules. That is economic warfare 101, but becomes physical warfare when it bankrupts people. And that's what Putin's saying. By the way, it came out in the London Telegraph a few years ago that Assad of Syria was directing his information agency to use the information at Infowars.com to counter claims that they had launched nerve gas attacks. And that, of course, came out in the national news that I was some traitor, that my news was being used by a horrible dictator. Well, later it got confirmed that the nerve gas was launched by al-Qaeda and Saudi Arabia and connected groups. And so a prophet is not known in their own country is the old biblical saying. I'm not claiming to be some prophet, but I'm here telling the truth, and the world is listening to InfoWars. In fact, that should be our new slogan. The world is listening to InfoWars. We first had the slogan 10 years ago that the truth lives here. Somebody else picked that up. I don't care, because imitation is the greatest form of flattery. And I'm not bragging about InfoWars either. The fact is, though, we tell the truth. We know what we're talking about. We predict a lot of things that end up happening. We have our finger on the zeitgeist. You have your finger on the zeitgeist. You are the leaders of the liberty movement worldwide. The world looks to America. Think about how Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who was in a gulag for 20 years for speaking up against Soviet oppression, once he came out and his secret book that had been smuggled out got published and he won the Nobel Prize for it. Think about how he was a rock star around the world for what he did until he saw tyranny in America and ran back to Russia and said, I've tried to reform Russia, but now America is falling to the disease that we were under. And so when I talk about the Japanese, the Chinese, the Russians, and others, I mean, Hamid Gul, former head of Pakistani intelligence, won't give anybody interviews. He's been on with us 5 times. He's the guy that ran the war against the Russians in Afghanistan with the CIA. And he comes on the show and concurs with our analysis of al-Qaeda and ISIS being Western run in Syria. These people listen and they come on because they know what I'm talking about is true, because they know as much as I do or more. And they're sick of corporate media that goes along with these frauds. 1 billion people will end up dying in the next decade, according to Lord Monckton's analysis, which is conservative, if they put these basic carbon taxes in. It's a death sentence. So that's why I start hyperventilating when I cover these issues, because they're so big. You're not blocking Obama on shutting down more power plants. And the average yuppie will say, I don't own a coal plant. I don't own stock in one of those companies. No, you just get, well, you used to get half your power from them. Now you get 30-something%. You notice your power bill's a lot higher. Okay, chumps. But you go, well, it's for the earth. I'm glad that Texas was supplying 4 states surrounding it, from Colorado, Oklahoma, Louisiana, New Mexico. Now Texas can't supply her own power after 6 years of Obama. But don't worry. More than 19, last time I checked, new giant coal power dirty plants opened right on the Texas border in Mexico. They shoot pure black smoke, mercury out the top, no scrubbers on them. They're much smaller. Just a smokestack and the big coal burners that turn the turbines that get generated from the boiled water. And they just belch it right out, and it blows right in and blows on the Mexicans, and our totally clean plants are getting shut down and not allowed to open. Just thought I'd remind you. Because, you know, here's Google. I'm doing pretty good getting into the stack, but Google goes off the climate change deep end. Eric Schmidt, the head of Google, in a NPR interview, went on to say that it is that no one is debating it. It's the same Al Gore quote, 100%, all scientists agree, and we should just accept everything. Town Hall has a transcript. Remember, this guy owns wide-body full jets. He flies around Last time I checked, in his own personal 777. One of the other big Google dons I was reading is buying one of those new giant Airbuses. You know, the ones that can hold like 300 people. Big, huge bedrooms in them, party suites, everything. There's only a few folks flying on them when they fly, and that's great. If you didn't get your money from Inside Deals, and if you didn't want to tell Africans they can't have a car or can't have air conditioning, and you're telling us we can't have anything, just like Al Gore says when he makes money off the carbon taxes, Google is heavily invested in the different carbon trading schemes. And it's a pure cold-blooded scam to selectively tax energy for every major company and corporation and individual but General Electric, Google, and others who pay zero taxes. And if you go back to 5 years ago, Obama signed an executive order exempting General Electric from the carbon orders he put out that shut down the power plants. Look it up. In fact, guys, just type it into the NSA, the public arm of it, Google. Just type in, General Electric gets power plant waiver from Obama. And I have this pet peeve. I mean, I talk about power plants at least once a week because it's such a perfect example of how my grandfather never talked about it. After he died, we dug through his letters and manuals and commendations and his Army Air Corps manual. They had like a class manual graduating. And in there were some of the letters of things they did, like bombing German power plants. Well, see, that's what an enemy does. They blow up your power plants. Well, the globalists just turn the power plants off, but leave their power plants on, and then rake you over the coals. It's such a sick joke. 180-plus countries, only about 15 of them are trying to put the carbon taxes in. Australia, some European countries, the UK, the US. Pachauri, who was the head of the UN climate body, turned out he lobbied to get a bunch of steel plants shut down and coal plants in England, and turned out he owns them in India and actually had those very plants, engineers and ownership in the same companies, move to India. That's all it is your company shut down, mine's allowed to operate. That's all it is. Cold-blooded, gangster, thuggism, 110%, laughing at you and your family, while Schmidt flies around on a 777 loaded with the beauty queens of the world.